Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Moore. I'm going to be presenting your annual food training, and I'm going to be discussing foodborne illness and how to prevent them by using the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point System. So our agenda, I'm going to start with just an overview of what I am talking about when I refer to the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point process, or HACCP for short. Then I'm going to move into a discussion about common foodborne illnesses. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about some of the bacteria and viruses that can cause illness in people. And then I'm going to talk about how to prevent those illnesses through personal hygiene, safe food handling and storage, and proper workstation maintenance. So in regards to the hazard analysis critical control point process, your first step is performing a hazard analysis. This is considering possible food hazards in your establishment. It could be related to ingredients or staff or equipment, chemicals, processes that you have in your kitchen. You want to evaluate the likelihood and severity of each hazard to determine which should be addressed in an HACC plan. Then you're going to determine your critical control points. This is a step or procedure where a food hazard can be prevented, eliminated, or reduced to a safe level. These are the things that you have the ability to control. Then you're going to set some critical limits. And this is a measurable, observable parameter that must be achieved to control a hazard. So for example, deciding what temperature food should be stored at and agreeing that that will be the temperature that those types of foods will be stored at and not deviate from those temperature ranges. You're going to establish a monitoring system. So as I mentioned, temperatures, maintaining a proper temperature of your hot and cold foods is important. How are you going to ensure that those critical limits are met? Are you going to check them regularly? At what intervals? What do you do if a critical limit is not met? You check your meat temperature and realize it is outside your critical control point, your critical limit. You're going to establish verification procedures. These are the ongoing procedures to ensure that your HACCP plan works. You're also going to establish recording procedures. This is the summary of the hazard analysis and your plan. You're going to make sure that this is documented, provide supporting materials, and make sure this is available to future staff, onboarding staff, and also protects you in the case of inspections. Those records should be created during plan operation and include the monitoring, corrective actions, and any of your verification records. So temperature checks, temperature logs, anything like that. So we're talking about developing an HACC plan because we want to be able to prevent foodborne illnesses. And some of the common foodborne illnesses that occur regularly in the food and beverage industry are the norovirus, salmonella, Clostridium perfringens, Campylobacter, Campylobacter, Staph aureus, Toxoplasma gondii, Listeria, and E. coli. These are all very serious. Some of us can snicker and laugh. We've all probably experienced food poisoning at some point, but the important thing is to know that that foodborne illnesses occur quite frequently. About 48 million people get sick from foodborne illnesses every year. About 128,000 of those are hospitalized, and about 3,000 of those then die. So yes, food poisoning is serious. People can die from it, which is why we're having this conversation. Obviously, from a business standpoint, we don't want people getting sick from the food we eat, but you especially don't want to be responsible for the death of anyone, particularly those that are susceptible to severe illness and death, and those are people like older adults, children, and pregnant women. People get sick from these different foodborne illnesses, which are mostly bacteria, but there are viruses that also come from foodborne illnesses by eating raw or undercooked foods or eating contaminated foods. So foods that even that are cooked properly, if they're then handled by somebody who is sick, who has the bacteria or the virus on their hands, they can then get it. So we're going to talk about what you guys can do as chefs and wait staff and anyone else that comes into contact with the food or eating utensils, what you guys can do to prevent the spread of these types of illnesses. So step number one, we probably already know, is personal hygiene. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. 20 seconds under warm water using soap, scrubbing consistently, getting from your wrists down to the tips of your fingers. You want to do this anytime you've handled food, before you've handled food, during food handling, if you think you've become contaminated, and after preparing food. You want to make sure that you are getting under your nails. The germs are not just on the surface of your hands, but can get under your nails and accumulate under jewelry, such as rings or bracelets or watches. So it's generally not recommended that you wear those in the kitchen when you're preparing food. You want to make sure as I mentioned, it can get under your nails. So having clean, trimmed, neat nails is important because it's a lot easier to tell if your hands or your nails are dirty. And even if they don't look dirty, you want to just continue to consider that they are dirty. And when you wash your hands, make sure that you're getting under your nails. Additionally, if you have facial hair, it should be trimmed and neat. I don't know a lot of people that don't at some point put their hands on their face. And so if you've got contaminated hands and you touch your face, any facial hair can then become contaminated. And no one wants to find facial hair in their food, much less if it was contaminated with E. coli or anything else. Same thing with hair. We all run our hands through our hair. We don't even realize it most of the time. And so having hair nets or other hair coverings is important, some sort of cap to keep hair from falling into your food, into people's food. One of the pet peeves and one of the things I've seen is people wearing their bath apron to the bathroom. It's a no-no. Bathrooms are gross, regardless if you're getting them cleaned on a regular basis. They're not someplace you really want to be wearing your apron, which then can come in contact with your food. The apron's there to keep your clothes clean, but also is a potential source of contamination if raw or contaminated food comes into contact with it. And so you should also avoid working sick. Even if you wash your hands and have a mask and have your hair and face coverings, you don't want to risk it, particularly if you're having symptoms of typical GI or foodborne illnesses, which is the stomach cramps, diarrhea, fever, nausea, and vomiting. And so you really should avoid working when you have any of those symptoms to reduce the risk of spreading a potential foodborne illness to others. The other thing you can do besides practice good personal hygiene is use safe food handling and storage. This means storing your food separately. You should not have raw meat stored with your fruits and vegetables, particularly things that you are not going to cook. Even if you are going to cook it, they should not be stored on the same shelf. You should use a meat thermometer when you're cooking. Uncooked meat is a significant source of foodborne illness or poorly cooked meat. All poultry should be cooked to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Beef, veal, lamb, pork should be 145 at least. Fish, 145 degrees Fahrenheit at least, and ground meats, 160 degrees at least. You should avoid what we call the danger zone. So between 0 degrees and 40 degrees and 140 degrees, foods that sit out at that temperature, you have about a 2-hour window. They're safe outside if they're in that temperature zone of 40 to 140 degrees, but after 2 hours, they should be refrigerated. You should keep all refrigerated foods at 40 degrees or below, and all frozen foods, obviously 0 degrees freezing temperature. If you're going to thaw foods, don't bring them out onto the counter and sit them out. That is a breeding ground for bacteria. Thaw your frozen foods in the refrigerator or cold water. Additionally, when you're preparing food, you should use separate cutting boards and prep space, or clean in between prep space, and which we will talk here in a second about. So workstation management, maintenance, that's a huge component to preventing foodborne illnesses. You're not just going to clean soap and water, you're going to use sanitizers. These are going to be approved cleaning supplies in your kitchen. Your company uses QUAT, which is very common, which is the quaternary ammonia cations. You're going to sanitize your stations before you use them and do any food prep. During, if you feel like something has become contaminated, you will not use it on the food, or if you feel like the food has become contaminated with the cleaning solution, you trash it and you start over. So as we mentioned, earlier, the germs can survive in many places. So this includes your workstation, cutting boards, utensils, countertops. And so that's why we clean before, during, and after preparing food, and making sure things are clean and sanitized in between food preps. You want to avoid clutter. As I mentioned, utensils are a prime candidate for harboring bacteria or viruses, and so having unused utensils or any other materials that you're not planning to use in your prep shouldn't be around. Even if you think they're clean and sanitized, there's no reason to have them out. It puts you at risk for cross-contamination. You want to prep similar foods together. So all your veggies should be prepped together. You shouldn't have your chicken out on the cutting board the same time you have your raw veggies. I think some of us have seen some really great stock photos in which they've got your cut up raw chicken and your cut up mushrooms and your cut up vegetables, and it's all on this one cutting board. It might look like a great picture, but it's actually a foodborne illness hazard. So don't do it. Again, having different colored cutting boards can be very helpful, and keep making sure that you follow those so only beef has touched that board, or only vegetables have been used on cut on that particular cutting board. And lastly, you really rules are no food or drink in the workstation. I know that it's hot in the kitchen, you get thirsty, but you need to have those things outside your work area. And if there's absolutely no way possible, they should be covered, particularly your drinks. Having open beverages near a prep station or workstation is, again, an accident waiting to happen in terms of cross-contamination. And so in summary, I wanted to reiterate, so the hazard analysis critical control point is a widely accepted system in the food and beverage industry that's an effective approach to identifying and mitigating food safety hazards. All of you have an obligation to engage in safe food handling, preparation, and storage practices to prevent foodborne illnesses. If you have any questions, please feel free to talk to me after this training, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.